Hello and welcome to the Shaw Local Bears Insider Podcast. I'm Sean Hammond, Shaw Local's Bears beat reporter. Joining me as he does every Monday and Friday during the football season, we have Michael Dwojak. Michael, how you doing this morning?
Good. I think Bears fans are happy, right? I think things turned out the way they wanted to. The weather's nice, so I think everyone is feeling pretty good after a commanding win on Sunday.
Yeah, we had a blowout. I'm going to give props to a lot of our listeners who were in the chat on Friday predicting a blowout, and they were absolutely right. I was a little bit more cautiously optimistic. I did pick the Bears. We both picked the Bears to win, but I given what Andy Dalton did those first couple of games, I was a little hesitant to pick a blowout, but that's exactly what we saw. I mean, that Panthers team banged up, already not very good. And, the Bears came out and just won every phase of the game. I mean, they dominated. The defense was fantastic. 3 turnovers again. They've had multiple turnovers in 4 of the 5 games this year. Offense looked great. Caleb Williams, maybe his best throw of the season on that second touchdown to DJ Moore. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more. Michael, what are kind of what did you like? Big picture, what stands out to you from yesterday's blowout win over the Panthers?
I think the biggest thing is I think you can put this game in context, right? Where it's like, yes, the Panthers are bad. They're injured. Obviously, they're not as talented as the Bears are. But I think we've also seen this Bears team play down to its level, like its opponent, right? You saw that against Tennessee. You saw that against Indianapolis. So, it would have been fair for a lot of fans to just be like, well, we're going to play down to their opponents. We're still not seeing what we need to see. And you saw a Bears team put together not a perfect performance, but you saw a team put together a great performance. The offense looked the best it has all season. Caleb Williams continues to take, strides in his development. The defense continues to prove why it believes, and I think by this point, a lot of people would agree that's a top 5 defense in the league. And the special teams even did a good job of battling some pretty strong wins down at Soldier Field. So, I think you can put this game in context and be like, they beat the Panthers. You're not going to all of a sudden say Caleb Williams is better than Patrick Mahomes. The Bears are going to the Super Bowl. But I do think you should give them credit for beating a team that's bad pretty handily and not winning by, a late-minute pick 6 like they did against Tennessee Titans or losing to the Indianapolis Colts, right? So I think it's a game that you're kind of like, all right, they did what they need to do. They're 2 for 2 now in this 3-game stretch. Mm-hmm. Can they continue that against the Jaguars in London and then head into the bye at 4-2?
We said it last week against a bad Rams defense. They took care of business when they needed to. Same thing. They beat up on a bad team, a bad defense. They took advantage of that. And it was nice to see them doing that, both passing and running. They seem to, the last couple of weeks have worked wonders for that run game. We'll see how much that continues. Obviously, they got a lot of bad defenses coming up on the schedule. Yeah. If you're watching live with us on YouTube, do us a favor, hit the thumbs up. That's a great way to support our show. If you're listening later on Spotify or Apple, please leave us a review. We would really appreciate that. And keep an eye out on our Twitter pages. I'm at Sean_Hammond. He's at MDwojak94. We will let you know when we're going live. If you want to join the show, you can come every Monday and Friday and chat with us live on YouTube. You can see our beautiful faces and get your questions in the chat, in the comments. We will get to some of your Bears thoughts here as we go along. Michael, winners and losers, it's a win. We're starting with the winners. We're keeping it positive. I mean, it's a little hard to find losers, at least from the Bears perspective, but I'm sure we'll get creative with it. Michael, who's your first winner?
I think I'm going to do myself. And part of it, obviously, it's Caleb. Caleb is the big winner. I think this weekend, just based on, every week we've kind of questioned, how is the development looking? He's checking down a lot. Is he going to be able to throw the long pass? Is he connecting with DJ Moore? There are so many questions. And I think every single week you've seen him take a step, right? You've seen him not do great against the Titans, do a little bit better against the Texans. And then he looked better, but made some mistakes against the Colts. And then the past 3 games, he hasn't thrown an interception, and he's looked like a good quarterback who relied on checkdowns the previous 2 games. And then yesterday, he showed that he can do a long pass to, DJ Moore for a touchdown, or, read the defense pretty well. So I think Caleb Williams is, a big winner here, not only just because he threw for 304, he had 2 touchdowns. He scrambled a little bit to get out of some sacks and that sort of stuff. But you're seeing the development that you wanted to see from Caleb Williams 5 weeks into the season. And I think you're starting to see, is he perfect yet? No, I don't think you're ever going to get a perfect product out of him during his rookie season. But I think you're seeing a progression from him that has a lot of Bears fans and the Bears themselves encouraged, because he's taking the next step. He threw for 300 yards twice in the last 3 games. I don't remember the last time a Bears quarterback has done that. But you're seeing that growth from him, and that's got to be really encouraging to see. 5 weeks in.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and yeah, you're right. Props to you. You had Caleb as your most valuable Bear pick. You got me this week. I had DeAndre Swift. Caleb had a few more fantasy points than DeAndre, although he made it. DeAndre Swift made it interesting. It was close there, but you picked up your second win. I got the lead after 5 weeks, 3-2. But the pressure's on, man. I gotta make it. I'm picking first in week 6, and I gotta make the right pick here. I don't want you to even this thing up.
Well, we talked about this yesterday at the game a little bit. I think we're going to put a limit on how many times you can take a quarterback. So I don't know whether we agree to like 4 or 3 times this season, but I think we should do a limit as to how many times. Because I feel like one of us would just end up choosing Caleb every single week, and that's just going to be a thing.
I think so too. The quarterbacks are sort of a cheat code when it comes to fantasy. I like 3. I like limiting that to 3, and then that makes us, be a little bit strategic about when we pick Caleb, depending on the opponent and all that. I like where you're at. That was actually, let's see, I'm looking back at our list here. Surprisingly, it took us till week 5 for either one of us to pick Caleb. Maybe not surprising. He's a rookie, but
yeah,
still, I'm a little surprised it took that long. But yeah, obviously he had a really good game. He looked good yesterday. Definitely a winner.
Yeah, I think definitely, and it's got to leave so many people encouraged as to what this means for the future.
Okay, I got a list of winners here. I'm not sure who I'm going to go with. Where am I going to take this? You know what? I'm going to go over to the defensive side because I see some comments about Billings in the chat, and I'm going to go with those 2 defensive tackles. I'll lump them together. Andrew Billings, Gervon Dexter. Dexter, man, 4 quarterback hits in that game. He's got 10 on the season through 5 games. I mean, that's what you expect out of your edge rushers. That's really, really impressive. And I know we talked about him a lot during the offseason. We talked him up a lot during the offseason, and the Bears talked him up a lot, when asked about him. And clearly that was warranted because he's off to an absolutely great start. I mean, he's so athletic. For a big dude, he can really run down. He can run, he can move, and so that's just what he's doing on the inside. Clearly affected Andy Dalton numerous times in that game. You saw it; it was most apparent on that interception from Kevin Byard with Gervon Dexter in his face, and Dalton had to just loft that football up there. It was an easy pick for Byard. You see what those guys are doing, even when Montez Sweat, doesn't have a ton of sacks, but it's coming from all over the defensive line right now for the Bears. And that's exactly kind of what they envisioned for Gervon Dexter when they drafted him a year ago. And yeah, it took a little time. He was a little bit raw as a rookie, but you're seeing the results right now.
Yeah, I mean, you just watch him play. He's swarming. He's just constantly around the ball, causing pressure. There was I think it was in the first quarter where he almost had a sack of Andy Dalton. He was just chasing him down, and he almost got him. But he's had 4 sacks already through 5 games. He's doing exactly everything that you need him to do. And you hope that this kind of continues and he stays healthy, because you have your 3-point defensive tackle for the next 8 years if he stays healthy. Because if this hits as well as it has through the first 5 weeks, you have a starter for at least 10 years if you're willing to pay him.
Yeah, I mean, the way he's playing right now, he's one of the best defensive tackles in the league. I mean,
right.
I have no problem saying that. I know the Panthers are a bad team.
Yeah.
Their center left the game with an injury. I get it, but what he's doing right now, and he's done it against multiple opponents in every single game he's getting in there, it's really, really impressive. And you know what? I'm going to take a victory lap too. This is my turn to take a victory lap. Andrew Billings with a sack. That was my surprise prediction. Although I did say it's not a huge surprise, but still, his first sack of the year. Billings has been in there a lot, every single game, just not obviously they're two different players, different styles, but Billings is a better pass rusher than he gets credit for.
Yeah, and I think Robert asked the question in the chat of if the Bears have the best, defensive tackle pairings in the NFL. Obviously, there's a lot of good talent out there, but I think that the Bears would, be one of the top ones based on what we've seen so far because, Billings is just so disruptive for the run game, and he, clogs up a lot of holes because he's just a huge dude, right? Like he's so big where it's like, how do you run around him and kind of try to contain him? But yeah, I mean these two guys right now, that really helps. Obviously, having Montez Sweat on the end helps a lot too, and you're getting a lot of production from like Darrell Taylor and DeMarcus Walker, and sometimes Austin Booker on the other side of the line. So for a defensive line that we had a bunch of questions on heading into the season. I think that you have to be really confident from what you've seen so far.
Yeah, Robert said, do we have the best defensive tackle pairing in the NFL? That's totally a fair question. He also commented and said that Dexter looks like he's having fun too. And yeah, he sure did look like that yesterday. Rick with the thought here that with the D-line playing so well, is that due to Eric Washington, the new defensive coordinator, coaching them up? I mean, that is entirely possible. I mean, Eric Washington his background is the defensive line. He is that's a big reason why he's here. Obviously, he's in charge of that whole defense, not just the D-line, but you got him and Matt Eberflus working together. They got this thing working really well right now. Robert says, I can imagine Eric Washington as a future head coach. I agree. I mean, the way he presents himself, the thoughtfulness of his answers and like interview stuff. And I honestly think that he's a guy who like players definitely look up to. And, he almost gives you that vibe of like your dad that you don't want to disappoint, and so I feel like players would absolutely listen to what he has to say. And I agree. I mean, look, I know it's Matt Eberflus's defense. Like we get that he's the one calling the plays. This is his fingerprints all over it. But Eric Washington has been at a bunch of different places. He was in Chicago over a decade ago, back with those 2010, 2011 Bears defensive lines that were really good. He was in Carolina when they went to the Super Bowl with Cam Newton and all that. And before coming here, he was with Buffalo. And those were all really good defenses. Like he's been around the league, and I wouldn't be surprised if a year from now, a couple years from now, he's in that conversation as a potential NFL head coach.
And I think he kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit, right? Because obviously it's, Matt Eberflus's defense, he's calling in that sort of stuff. But, he has made a good impact from, this defense was obviously talented before. Let's not pretend like this is like anything new. Right. But like they still needed to take it to another level, right? Like there were still, times where they were giving up a bunch of yardage, and they still have a little bit. But this defense just continues to take takeaways. They've created at least one takeaway in each game this year. I think it's at least 2 takeaways in 4 of the first 5 games. And he's really kind of elevated them, the whole to another level. And I'm sure he's had a hand in helping this defensive line kind of getting the best out of what they have.
Yeah, definitely. Michael, next winner, what you got?
I'll go with the defense since I went offense in the first with my first selection. Jaquan Brisker's having himself a nice little stretch here, right? Like he created a fumble on a pretty vicious hit. A lot of us in the press box were asking, and we asked him after the game if he was feeling it after the game and whether he was being evaluated for a concussion. He said he felt it, but he wasn't evaluated, and he felt fine after the game. But that's a vicious hit, and that obviously created a turnover that led to points for the Bears. Obviously created some favorable field position for them. So he's had a great stretch. He obviously intercepted the pass last week to secure the win against the Rams. But he's flying out there, man, and he looks really good right now. Obviously, this defense, when we talk to different players after the game in the locker room, everyone's just saying everyone is stepping up. So you can say, I don't want to steal your thunder, whether it's Byard, whether it's, Jalen Johnson, even though he didn't have a pick, or, Kyler Gordon for recovering a fumble. All these guys are swarming around the ball, and they just look great right now.
Yeah, they do. And they made life hard for Andy Dalton and for that Panthers game. I mean, the Panthers offense, rather. I thought it was interesting how they all mentioned that first touchdown they gave up where, the Chuba Hubbard broke through that first line of defense. And, I'd have to go back and look at the play again, but obviously somebody should have been there on the back end, and there wasn't anybody there, and he broke free, 38-yard touchdown, I think it was. And I was surprised in a game where, they kicked butt the rest of the day. They won by 26 points or whatever. So many defensive guys brought that up and said, we knew that wasn't us. Like that moment sparked us. Like we were angry about that. We should have been better. And to see them, it's one thing to recognize that and say that, but it's another thing to then come out and clean up the issues and just dominate the rest of the day. And I thought that was really impressive turnaround, because it could have been a situation where everybody's pointing the finger saying, oh, you were supposed to be in this spot or whatever, but it wasn't. And I know it was early in the game, but they did a nice job responding to that. And it's coming from everywhere. The defensive line, really good, as we talked about. The secondary has picked up right where it left off. Kevin Byard's been a great addition to that group. I thought he played really well. He's played really well these first 5 games. And obviously you saw him with the interception there. And the linebackers are playing well too. Flus gave them a shout out last week. He said he felt like the linebackers have been playing at a really high level throughout this first month of the season. You like where you're at with this Bears defense, and you got some winnable games here. These guys are going to keep you in games no matter who you're playing against. For my last winner, I'm going to go with sort of a combo here. I'm going with the hurry up offense / Shane Waldron. We saw for the second week in a row, we saw them go hurry up when they had a matchup that they liked. When they had the Panthers in a personnel unit with an extra linebacker in there, they said, okay, we're not going to let them substitute. We're gonna hurry up here. We're not going to huddle. And that led directly to that first touchdown to DJ Moore. They had them. They had done a couple of running plays with Swift in there, and so those linebackers were definitely keyed in on the run. And Caleb did a little fake handoff to Swift and kept those linebackers in check, and then it just opened things up in that secondary for an easy touchdown for DJ Moore to kick off the scoring.
And I think that's huge that he recognized that, right? I think it's huge, where I think the conversation they had a couple weeks ago was, it seemed for Caleb Williams was a big point of hey, if something's working, we got to keep going with it. It doesn't matter what we thought ahead of the game. It doesn't matter what we kind of schemed for before the game. If you're seeing that this huddle up offense is working, you got to keep going with it. If you see that DeAndre Swift is able to get a bunch of yards, keep riding that and that sort of stuff. And they kind of did that, right? They rode DeAndre Swift a little bit. Then I feel like he kind of maybe slowed down a little bit. Then they put Roschon Johnson in, and they got a couple of good, runs out of him as well. So I think that's a big thing for, not only this win, but for this offense to continue to develop, where Shane Waldron, notice what's going on during the game. And I feel like sometimes you see a lot from offensive coordinators where they're just well, I had all these brilliant plays thought up before the game. I need to run every single one of them for all these different scenarios, instead of realizing what's happening during the game. So I think that's big, that they saw what happened. They saw that the huddle up offense was working for them for the second straight week. They ran with it. They obviously succeeded with it, and hopefully they can continue to do that as the season progresses.
That's what good offenses do. They see a mismatch and they take advantage of it. And in the NFL, when you're going no huddle and you don't substitute, you're not allowing the defense to substitute either. And so you can catch teams in a bad situation. And it seems like Caleb's pretty comfortable when they do that. I think that was, obviously he did that at USC and found success doing it. I think that's something that he can find a little groove there, get a little momentum. And certainly that, maybe that goes back to that conversation that some of those veteran leaders had with Shane Waldron a couple of weeks ago. And that was clearly one of the things that we're talking about. When we see an advantage, when we see something that's working, we want to keep the pedal to the metal and keep going. Don't huddle up again. Just get into that flow. Like I said, it's going to be hard to find some losers, at least from the Bears' perspective. I'm going to throw out a loser here, general from this game. Dave Canales, to me, anything Panthers related, honestly, you could just lump the whole Carolina Panthers in there.
Yeah.
Man, that's looking like a dire situation. They're all injured. If I'm Dave Canales, I'm not so sure that I am feeling so good about taking this head coaching job, Michael.
No, and what do you have, right? Obviously they have they'll have their first round pick this year, but then they obviously traded it to the Bears, their second round pick, so they don't have that. And it's just kind of hard because you had the opportunity to have the number one pick to choose CJ Stroud. You could have kept it to have Caleb Williams. And instead you just decided to trade up, take Bryce Young, and you're in the situation that you're in right now where he got a couple snaps toward the end of the game, but that's pretty much it. You have Andy Dalton in there, and he looked good for the past couple of weeks, but against a good defense like the Bears, he looked like Andy Dalton, and it's like 10th or however long year he is in the NFL. So, not really good things for the Carolina Panthers right now.
No, not really good things. And you think about that trade that they swung to go up and get Bryce Young, and it's like you can play the what if game, until eternity. But like if they don't make that move, you're looking at, they're sitting at number 9, and guys like Jalen Carter and Darnell Wright, Jahmyr Gibbs are all still there on the table. And you imagine how different that team could look with one of those guys and Caleb Williams. It's a whole rabbit hole you could go down. But yeah, I would not be feeling very good if I was Dave Canales about where this is heading, and certainly not with the state of that organization. Michael, you got a loser for us?
I feel like my loser is Nate Davis. I feel like, listen, you saw Tevin Jenkins come out with an ankle injury, and then you get Bill Murray in there. So yeah. I think that speaks volumes, right? I think that speaks volumes of, Nate Davis isn't on the injury report. Like, sure, maybe he still is recovering from a groin injury, but he's not on the injury report, so he's not getting the benefit of the doubt there. At this point, it's very clear that they're just going to keep him on the roster in case of emergency. And then maybe you try to trade him, or maybe you try to. I don't think they're in a position now to trade offensive linemen away from the team. But during
I don't know what team would trade for this guy.
Well, yeah, I don't know what you're really going to get from him either way. But do you cut him at the end of the season and just eat that loss, or? It's just very interesting that you saw him come in last week when Tevin got injured, but this week Nate Davis didn't come in. Obviously, it would have involved Matt Pryor moving over to the left side and then Nate Davis coming in the right side. Maybe it's different if Matt Pryor gets injured. But yeah, I mean, you can't be encouraged by what you've seen from Nate Davis. But I guess in a way, it's kind of good that the Bears gave him a chance. He didn't seize it, and they moved on from that scenario.
Yeah, and that's what you have to do in the NFL. If you're trying to win football games, you can't just keep trying to use a guy who's clearly not working, or you have to be able to adjust, and especially if that means you're not playing one of your highest paid offensive linemen. Yeah, I mean at this point they're going to cut him in February or March and move on. Like that's the way it's going to be. He's if the Bears cut him next spring, they would save $9.5 million against the cap. It wouldn't cost them a whole lot. They'd eat $2 million. Yeah, they'll take that, no problem. Right. You cut your losses, move on. Yeah, it was the beneficiary of all that was Bill Murray getting in there for his. I believe those were his first snaps on offense in his NFL career. Yeah, looked all right. Looked pretty good. I know I had a lot of people. Mention it in my mentions on Twitter saying Bill Murray's on the team. And yeah, if you haven't been paying attention, the Bears do have a guy named Bill Murray. He is not the comedian, but he is Bill Murray.
I mean, he could be funny. We don't know yet.
He could be funny. Yeah. You know what? Maybe
don't cut him short, Sean.
Next time in the locker room, I'll see if he has any jokes or anything. See if he has any bits. For me, a loser. Another loser, this is another goofy one. I'm going with the middle of the schedule. The middle of the Bears schedule.
You're really reaching here, aren't you? I think all of these a really good game.
Yeah, you know what? I don't have a lot of Bears losers. You could throw Khalil Herbert in there. Maybe Michael, you will. I know we've talked about him a lot the last couple of weeks. I'm throwing the middle of the schedule. The Panthers. I really do think the Bears are going to beat this Jaguars team next week. I honestly I think. Like the Washington defense, at least when you look at the analytics, they're not that good. The offense I feel like is kind of carrying that team. I know that they're winning football games, and I know that a lot of the focus is going to be on Jaden Daniels versus Caleb Williams in a couple of weeks. But I think this is an opportunity for the Bears to score points in that game too. I think all these teams are going to have a tough time against the Bears. The Patriots are coming up. The Cardinals, especially the Cardinals, another bad defense. If you can, hold Kyler Murray in check a little bit, I think the Bears can win that game. I really do think there's a chance to go on a run here, Michael.
Yeah, I am too. And, not jumping ahead in that sort of stuff, but, I do think the Jaguars winning their first game was kind of good. You kind of wanted them to win that first game, just so you weren't, there's obviously you go to London, there are all those aspects and that sort of stuff, and you can have a team kind of come together and earn their first win. And if you're the Bears, you're kind of like, all right, they took care of that. Now they can go back to kind of competing at the level that we've kind of seen.
That's a good point. It is good they picked up that win.
Yeah. But with the Commanders, I mean, I think everyone is talking a lot about all these points that the Commanders have scored. But listen, they scored 20 against the Buccaneers. They scored 21 against the Giants, 38 against the Bengals, 42 against the Cardinals, and then 34 against the Browns. I don't think that they've played a defense like the Bears yet, right? I don't think that they've played a top-tier defense. And you've seen that this defense can kind of bait quarterbacks into mistakes. And we're not breaking down the Commanders yet. Obviously, that'll happen in a couple weeks. But
we got time,
it'll be really interesting to see what that matchup looks like in a couple weeks. Because I think right now, you might see the high scores and you're like, oh, the Commanders are playing at a great pace. But I'm curious to see, how they do this week. Against the Ravens, and then they got the Panthers after that. But it'll be an interesting matchup there.
Nobody has been able to take away Jaden Daniels' bread and butter, his strengths. And at some point, defenses are gonna really, somebody's gonna really key in on not giving up the deep ball. And then we're gonna, it's gonna be that classic situation where you got a quarterback who comes in here and is throwing the ball all over the place, and then the defense is going to adjust and force him to check it down and make some of the easy throws. And then we'll see what that offense is really made of. And look, it's entirely possible that both these rookie quarterbacks are really good. And that's okay.
Crazy.
Bears fans don't need to freak out because Jaden Daniels playing well. I think all that stuff is overblown. And we're going to, of course, have to talk about that a lot in the lead up to that game. So maybe we'll just end that here. We'll save that for a couple of weeks. But it's entirely possible both those guys are really good.
Yeah, and that's fine, right? What does that really matter? Yeah. What does that really matter if your quarterback is good, right? What does it really matter what another quarterback is doing and how they're competing? As long as your quarterback is competing at a high level, I think that's all that really matters.
And that second touchdown to DJ Moore is a perfect example. The way he looked off the safety and got him to bite going one way and then turned and saw DJ Moore one-on-one. I mean, that was a high-level play from a rookie quarterback in his fifth game or whatever it is. Look, he's already got a pair of 300-yard games. This is already looking better than what we've seen from a Bears quarterback in the last several years. But we're talking losers here, Michael. You got one more for us?
I'll go with the one that you kind of talked. I'll do a double one. One's kind of just Khalil Herbert. He's not playing. We heard his name on a kickoff return today. And we were like, oh, Khalil, he's in the game. He's playing.
Oh, there he is.
But yeah, I mean, he's not getting any right. I don't know. We've talked about it a lot, and it just seems like they're not willing to use him for some reason. I don't know whether it's trade bait. I don't know whether it's, you just are stashing him because you don't want to risk him or injury or anything like that, or maybe it's a Nate Davis situation. I don't know. You don't want to assume because you just don't know, right, about what the scenario is. But yeah, Khalil Herbert's one of my losers, and I'll do. It's funny for me to say, but I think I'll say Bears fans are kind of losers because they have to wait until November 10th to watch this team play again because obviously they gave up the home game on Sunday because they're going to go to London, and then they got the bye week. Then they go to the suburbs of Washington, and then they go to Arizona. So Bears fans have to wait a whole month before they watch their team play at home.
Yeah, unless you're coming out to London,
right.
Unless there's any Bears fans out there making the trip. That is a pretty long break. I mean, it was such a beautiful day yesterday at Soldier Field. Yeah, we touched on it very briefly at the top. The wind was a little funky. You looked at the flags on the other side of the stands, outside the stadium, and it was blowing really hard to the north. But as we know, Soldier Field gets weird the wind inside the bowl of the stadium. It's like you look at the little flags on the goalpost. There's probably a name for those. I don't know what it is. And both sides of the field, like they're blowing in different directions. It's like you can't really figure out what's going on. It did affect the game a little bit.
Yeah.
Caleb talked about it, especially that throw to Cole Kmet. That was one example where it really sort of affected things. I wonder too, on the missed extra point from Cairo, how much the wind played a factor into that one. It's definitely tricky, and that's something that the rookies like Caleb Williams are going to have to learn.
And he learned that against, I think it was the first throw he had to get for Keenan Allen on the first drive. When, you watch that throw and you're like, whoa, what the heck was it? Like, you're just kind of like, how did he misfire that much? But then after the game, he said, like, oh, I didn't realize, like, how strong the wind was, where, the wind just kind of took the ball and kind of missed Keenan there. And obviously, an underlooked play, I feel like, is Keenan Allen, knocking that ball down, because that could have been a pick six very easily, and that would have been quite the start to the game if the Carolina Panthers had a quick pick six to start the game.
That's a really good point. Rick also wanted to note that Arizona is going to be a home game. The Bears do always travel well. Flights from Chicago to Arizona for that weekend are very expensive. So yes, I imagine there's going to be a lot of Bears fans going down that way. Mike asks if the London game will count toward the home win streak.
I figure no.
I don't count it. I wouldn't count it. I don't think it would. That's an unusual situation, of course. But yeah, guys, if you have any other last thoughts or comments before we get out of here, throw them in the chat. We really do appreciate you joining us as you do every Monday and Friday during the season. We are going to try to do Friday at our usual time. Now, I'm going to be 6 hours ahead in London, so we're going to have to hopefully we can do 10 a.m. We may have to push it back an hour or two. We'll see based on my schedule, just trying to get all our Bears coverage in from the day, because that will be after interviews and stuff for me, which is weird. But we will try to do one on Friday. TBD what we're going to do for Monday at this point, but we will let you know. We'll keep you in the loop when we're going to go live. If you're listening after the fact, as always, keep an eye on our Twitter pages. We'll let you know. When we're going live. You can come join the show and drop your Bears thoughts in the comments, your questions, your thoughts, your whatever's on your mind. We're happy to chat Bears. Rick is asking what day I'm leaving for London. I am leaving Wednesday night. I'm going to be there for all the coverage Thursday and Friday. The Bears are leaving this afternoon. They're going to be there all week, which is interesting. Matt Eberflus was asked about that yesterday. He mentioned his trip to Italy over the summer and how long that took him to sort of get used to the time change. And you do wonder if direct experience like that is the reason why they're doing that. Because in the past, the Bears didn't. Last time they went to London, they might have left on Wednesday or Thursday. I think they only had one practice over there. And, it was sort of be there as short as possible. And I personally think that why would you not want to get your body used to that time change, especially with the bye coming up after that?
Well, and you see that a lot with a lot of West Coast teams, right? Or you have, like, if you have back-to-back weeks on the East Coast, you just stay there for the whole week. Like, there's no point of traveling back and forward, obviously for the mileage itself, but obviously just for your body clock. But yeah, I mean, obviously, as both of us have been to Europe, we know, like, the whole jet lag is very real, and you need to, it takes a while to adjust to it. So if you're an athlete trying to adjust to it, I think it makes sense to go for the whole week. I think, talking after the game, I think some guys were like looking forward to it. Jaquan Brisker was not looking forward to it, which is kind of funny. He wasn't looking forward to the long plane ride and that sort of stuff, which I get. I'm sure
I can't see him sitting still for 8 hours. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even imagine after playing a football game, that ride home has to hurt a little bit. Like, even now, like at almost 30, the knees kind of start to hurt, the feet kind of start to hurt after you're 6 or 7 hours in just sitting straight. But if you're an athlete, I think that's probably a tough ask. But I do think, I haven't seen, I don't know if you've seen what the Jaguars are planning on doing. Obviously, they're more used to playing in this game because I think they play at least one game, if not two games, in England every single year.
Yeah.
Listen, it'll be interesting. I think it's a good thing that they're going early, get their body used to it, kind of get used to the time. See some things too. I feel like that's not really like a weekend where you like fly out to like, Carolina, or you're going out to New England or whatever. Like, you're going to London, you want to see some things if you're going to go. You're not just going to go for 24 hours and call it a day. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that happens and how much of an impact it is. Because I feel like, you mentioned the last time they went to England. I think that was against the Raiders. That was a pretty sloppy game for the Bears, and they didn't really look good. So I would say probably do the opposite of what that performance was, because that was a pretty ugly performance and really kind of turned, the trajectory of the season.
So I don't know exactly when the Jaguars fly out. However, as far as the media schedule goes, they do not have a practice over there until Friday. So I'm guessing they're not leaving till Wednesday or Thursday or at some point in the middle of the week, because they're not practicing over there. They're only doing one practice over there, which is exactly what I said the Bears did last time. They're doing a Friday practice, and then it's game day on Sunday. Maybe that is an advantage Bears. Obviously, the Jaguars do this every year, so they're used to this. I'm sure they have a schedule that they like, that they've gotten used to over the years. And yeah, you do feel good that if you're the Bears, you're playing them the first week in London, because Jacksonville's staying the whole week after that. And maybe it just comes down to, they don't want their players and coaches away from home for that long. Maybe that's why they're going a little bit later this week.
That could be
it could be as simple as that. But yeah, it's going to be a long stay for them.
Yeah, they'll be over there for a while, and it'll be interesting to see just how that kind of works out for them. But again, just looking at Jacksonville, it's good that they won that first game. Maybe get a little bit of that confidence and that pressure off of you. And then if you're the Bears, you're hoping, all right, they got that over with. Now we can compete, the way we kind of expected them to. And it will obviously break this game down. And on Friday, we'll see you. The nice thing about you looking at all the stuff is we'll know who'll be playing and what the questionables are and all that sort of stuff. But it'll be a really fun week, I'm sure, for you and for them to get out there. But at the end of the day, it's a game that they need to win, because that road trip is going to be a long plane ride home if they lose that game.
The flight's going to feel a lot better after a win than after a loss.
Yeah.
All right. This is a good place to end it today. We do appreciate you guys joining us, as always. Thanks for joining us live on YouTube. Hit the thumbs up on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, leave us a review. Keep an eye on our Twitter pages. We'll let you know when we're going live. And as always, head to shawlocal.com. We have tons of stuff up there from yesterday's game. If you want to do some post-game reading, head to shawlocal.com, and please consider subscribing. That's the number one best way to support our show. He's Michael Dwojak. You can find him on Twitter at mdwojak94. I'm Sean Hammond. I'm at Sean_Hammond. This has been the Shaw Local Bears Insider Podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back with you on Friday. Have a great week.